Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for Scarborough-Rouge Park.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sharing my time with the member from Sackville, Preston, Chistacook. I'm pleased to speak this morning in support of our government's budget. I want to start by congratulating our Finance Minister and our Prime Minister for delivering not only on our election promises, but on building a visionary budget, one which I'm confident will irreversibly change the lives of millions of Canadians for the better. This budget represents a significant shift in the direction of our country. We're asking top income earners in Canada to pay a bit more so that the majority of Canadians will have more money to spend on important staples like food, shelter, and childcare. This will greatly benefit those in the lowest end of the income ladder. This is all the more important as Budget 2016 sets the groundwork to bring in a group of people who suffered generations of failed government policies and neglect. Of course, I speak of Canada's Indigenous population, towards equal opportunity in government services. This budget takes the first steps in healing old wounds and bringing about true reconciliation in our country. It is a statement that restores a promise that generations of Canadians have known, that no matter who you are, where you came from, if you work hard, you will get ahead. Today, I want to devote my time to focus on two sets of policies that I'm particularly proud of. This budget announced historic investment in infrastructure and our Indigenous peoples, programs that will help create a more equitable and prosperous country. First, on infrastructure. Canada lags behind in investment to our infrastructure. Investment in infrastructure is an investment in our collective future. I compare infrastructure investments to a personal decision that I had to make many years ago. I recall the time that I was accepted to law school. Like most students, I had no money to go to school, but I looked at it as an investment. I borrowed money, I went to law school, built a successful practice, and then I paid the money back. I had a more stable career and put a great deal of money back into the tax system, and I created jobs. The investment we make in our infrastructure today is analogous to the decisions individuals and families routinely make. Many Canadian cities are currently experiencing infrastructural backlogs, and with the lowest debt-to-GDP ratio of any G7 countries, there has never been a better time to invest in building roads, institutions that will keep our economy strong. We have historically low interest rates, currently hovering around 2.5%. This compared to 6% 15 years ago, 10% 25 years ago, and 18% 35 years ago. Equally important, Mr. Speaker, is a need to boost our economy. We know that in many parts of this country, there's a dire need to infuse capital to kickstart the economy. Our current commitment to infrastructure does just that. It takes advantage of historically low interest rates, infuses capital into our economy, creates jobs, and secures important, much-needed infrastructure projects for our future. We're allocating $11.9 billion to build the infrastructure that we need now and to make long overdue repairs to aging systems. Public transit, we're putting $3.4 billion towards phase one of our government's plan to improve public transit in Canada. Public transit opens doors to employment and educational opportunities not possible without it. Investment in public transit not only provides a quicker way for people to get around, it helps equalize the playing field for urban Canadians. I represent a riding with high youth unemployment, and I know that improvement in our public transit system will pay dividends over the coming years to our youth in our community. In addition to these historic investments, our government has committed $3.4 billion for affordable housing, community centres, and childcare centres. These funds will ensure our communities are better places to live and provide more low-income Canadians of all ages with peace of mind. All of these investments will start to provide an immediate boost to our economy and will better the lives of Canadians in my riding of Scarborough-Rouge Park and across this country. I'm particularly proud of our post-secondary institutions Strategic Investment Fund. Budget 2016 plays a major role in supporting post-secondary institutions in Canada. We have allocated $2 billion in additional funding that will be matched by the provinces and territories to build and update research labs, training facilities, and on-campus incubators. Investments that will ensure Canadian post-secondary institutions remain leaders in innovation and research. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to say that my riding is home to the University of Toronto Scarborough campus and Centennial College, both hubs of learning in Scarborough. I'm pleased that our Minister of Science was at Centennial College in Scarborough last week to announce the Post-Secondary Institution Strategic Investment Fund. Many university and college presidents, student groups, and community members were in attendance. We were mesmerized by the incredible demonstrations of talent of Centennial College students who have the key to the collective future in new technology, the new jobs that we often speak of. University of Toronto Scarborough campus has a master plan which Principal Bruce Kidd and his team shared with the members of this House, the members of the Scarborough team. The master plan supports the renewal of Scarborough as a region, and I believe Post-Secondary Institution Strategic Investment Fund will greatly support UTSC and our region escalate the much-needed development that will lead to a more educated workforce, more equipped scientists, incubation of new businesses and technology, and ultimately, more jobs. As an example, this January 29th, I had the privilege of taking part in the opening of the new Environmental Science and Chemistry building at the University of Toronto. It is a magnificent structure. It uses 40% less energy for a building of that size and meets the coveted LEED gold standard. This building houses world-class researchers and PhD and other graduate students. They're looking to help us as countries address issues such as global warming and greenhouse gas emissions. The output from this building will help us develop the technologies, policies, and workforce to build the green economy of the future, an economy that can grow and help the middle class. Let me now turn to our historical investment into the Indigenous communities. The Prime Minister has made it abundantly clear that there is no relationship more important to him or this government or our country than the one with our First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. I note that this morning, the Supreme Court of Canada expanded the definition of Indian under the Indian Act to include the Métis Nation and non-status Indians in the Daniels versus Canada decision. In effect, our investment in Indigenous communities is even more pressing today. Just 2 days ago, our House debated the most recent suicides in Ottawa-Piscat and the broader issues of suicide in Indigenous communities. This is yet another tragedy, but sadly not unfamiliar to those who live in these communities. Yes, we know that there is no easy fix, and we know that money alone will not fix this problem. But we know that the long-term solutions exist if government puts its energy and resources to it. 500 years of colonization, oppression, and failed policies cannot be undone overnight. The devastating news that we hear from many Indigenous communities is a reflection of this history. Budget 2016 moves forward with the goal of renewing the relationship with our Indigenous peoples. I believe this budget will serve as a down payment to reset the relationship. Though programs announced in Budget 2016 will not solve the long-standing problems overnight, it is the first step to ensuring that someday, soon, all Indigenous children are able to have the same hopes, aspirations, and opportunities as any other child in Canada. To this end, Budget 2016 proposes investment of $8.4 billion over 5 years, beginning 2016-2017, to improve socioeconomic conditions, educational outcomes, and the well-being of our Indigenous population. This investment is a significant increase over funding that would have been made available under the Kelowna Accord. Of this funding, $2.6 billion is earmarked for improving on-reserve education, including funds for special education and First Nations language education. $634 million have been earmarked to improve child welfare, and $1.2 billion is to be allocated towards social infrastructure with a focus on health and housing. These are investments that our Indigenous communities desperately need right now. They will provide youth with opportunity to build their communities. Boil water advisories are common in many First Nation communities, and we're earmarking $2.24 billion in water and wastewater infrastructure. Spending cap, as mentioned earlier, is a very, very important challenge that's faced the First Nations communities. We're removing the spending cap after a number of years where this has stagnated the growth and the needs of the Indigenous communities. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, this budget is one that we should all be incredibly proud of. It invests in our future and the future of our children. It is a statement on who we are as a people and it opens a new chapter in the relations with our Indigenous population. Budget 2016 is a truly inclusive approach to governing Canada, and it will pave the way for the prosperity of all Canadians well into the future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question